Good evening, everyone.
About Raf, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Right, so we're going to continue with the Bet Yosef, do the second half of it. It's like a whole chapter here. We did one half yesterday, so we'll just finish it off by another, and then we'll do Shulchan Aruch, and we're done with this chapter. So it says like this. So he brings you the Hagot Maimon, Perk Hey, B'Shem HaSamak, in the name of the Samak. V'chol zeh divrei aposkim k'Rav Sheshet. All this is according to the ones who paskin like Rav Sheshet. שצריך להפסיק עד סוף ברכת הזן. That you have to stop until the end of ברכת הזן. דאילו להריף הרמב"ם, because going to different Rambam שפסקו כרב נחמן, they pass like רב נחמן, שלא צריך להפסיק, they don't have to stop, you don't have to stop, אלא לברך, just לברך, that part. Only, you have to take a break from there to say that, but no more than that. שאכלנו משלו, לברך שאכלנו משלו, בלבד, that's only that piece. דבר פשוט הוא, so then it's obvious, שאף על פי שלא חזר לאכול אחר שהפסיק. It's obvious, he says, that even if he didn't come back to eat after he stopped, צריך להתחיל מתחילת ברכת הזן. So then for sure, you would have to start from the beginning, right, and do the whole ברכת המזון. ורשב"א כתב שהרעב"ד פירש, so Rashba says that the Ravad explained, the kaya hi del el, that it's going on what we said above, the Amaran, the Shlosha Shachlu, we said that three people who ate, ve'atzah echad mehem l'shuk, and one of them went out to the market, korin lo mezamin, so we call him and we do zimun on him, ve'ala tinan umibayalan, so he says, and regarding that, we said that they asked the question, ad hechan birkat zimun, how far does the blessing of zimun go? So, that means to say that how long do you have to wait around? They should fulfill the obligation of zimun. Right, so I want to explain something to you here. I don't want you guys to get the wrong impression, because what we said yesterday was that two people are leaving, one guy's staying. So, right, or something like that, right? That they're gonna do zimun, and the question is, how long is zimun? Does it go until nevarech? That's the first opinion. The other opinion is it goes until hazan, the first blessing, right? But nevertheless, right, whichever opinion you go like, it doesn't mean that the guy who is staying around and is not leaving, he has to say the first blessing with them. Because he doesn't. Right? Why not? Because it's not a part of the zimun, it's a part of the Birkat Hamazon. Birkat Hamazon is going to say later on when he finishes. So we're not talking about that. That's not the issue. The issue is how long does he have to wait for them, before he continues to eat? Does he have to wait till Nevarech, or does he have to wait till the end of Hazanat Hakol? But in terms of reciting the first blessing himself, he will not do that now. He'll do that when he finishes. So there shouldn't be any misunderstandings, right? That's the way it is. עד היכן צריך להתעכב, כדי שיצא ידי החשבון. אמר רב ששת עד הזן. So Rav Sheshet said until Hazan et Hakol, right? V'ashta mibaya lan, and then we're asking a different question. According to Rav Sheshet, כיוון שזה מתעכב עד הזן, since he's waiting until Hazan, שהוא Birkat Zimun, which is a blessing of Zimun, according to this opinion, הוא כבר יצא ידי Zimun, so therefore he already fulfilled the obligation of Zimun, כשהוא חוזר ומברך לעצמו. So now, right, when he goes back to bless by himself, להיכן הוא חוזר? Where does he go to, right? Does he go from the beginning, or does he go from the second blessing? Because the first blessing was already recited, not by him, but the other two guys. So, right, they said that he has to go the place where he stopped. Then it means the second blessing. So according to this opinion, he's going to start from a second blessing, even though we don't paskin like that. Don't want you to get any wrong ideas. So according to this, he says, according to this opinion, whatever, we hold like Rav Sheshet, the Birkat Zimun ad Hazan, that Birkat Zimun goes until Hazan, the Geonim pasku Rav Nachman. But the Geonim paskin like Rav Nachman. So he says that's like a wondrous thing. שזה מברך אחד ויוצא למלאכתו וחוזר ומתחיל במקום הברכה שהשנייה. So he said that sounds, not so tangible. What does that mean? That he's gonna go, right? Go back and eat, and then he's gonna start from the second blessing. Shepasak, but he stopped there. Like the Geonim, mistabra. So he says, So he says, the more, the superior opinion here is the Geonim, he says. That's how he concludes here. Mm-hmm. Right, so in other words, we don't go like Rav Sheshet, according to the Geonim. We go like Rav Nachman. And that's the more plausible opinion. That's what he's saying. Okay. So Tosfot brought Ravad b'shem Aram Maivra. They brought a name of a different rabbi. Meivra. Aram Meivra. Okay? Whatever, right? Katav Rav Hai. So Rav Hai says, Shechat shemafsik l'shnayim, one who stopped because of two people, tzarich lachazor barech hamotzi. So he holds that he has to go down hamotzi again. Right? It's like a new meal. We don't paskin like that. And again, right? The Ravad also says this. Tzarich l'tol yadav, he has to wash his hands too. So according to this, it's like a new event altogether. We don't go that way. But that's what the Torah brought, right? The name of these rabbis. Zelashon Rosh. So it says, right, the Bit Yosef, the language of the Rosh is like this. Perek Shlosha Shachlu. In this perek, right, which is in Brachot, Raiti Katub Mishem Rabbeinu Hai. So it says, I saw written in the name of Rabbi Gaon, Hamafsik Leshnayim Tzarich Levarech Hamotzi. That if he stops for two people, he does have to do Hamotzi again. So it says in Ravad, so he fulfilled the obligation of that blessing retroactively. So therefore, he does have to wash his hands, and also try to make another hamotzi, to have a chabura. So it's like, he says it's compared to like a group of people that left, and came back. Let's say they had to go and greet the Chatan, right, to do the mitzvah. So they do need a blessing, right, retroactively for what they ate. And then when they come back, when they return, they need another blessing to continue the meal. It's like a new meal. So it says, עד כאן, הכוח משמע דלשונו, דלרבי היי ורבד, אף על פי שצריך לברך המוציא, אין צריך לברך המפריע. So he says, right, it implies from his language here, that even though these rabbis say, you do have to do a new hamotzi, but what you don't have to do is do birkat hamazon, beforehand, before you do a new hamotzi. על מה שאכל, שההפסקה, שהפסיק, says because the break that he took over here, חשיבה כאילו ברך למפריע. It's considered to be like he blessed already retroactively. ומרדכי כתב, says מרדכי, כן, בשם הרח, name of the רח, same thing he says. ונראה מדבריו גם כן, שאינו צריך לברך למפריע, you don't have to go back right and bless again, על מה שאכל, or whatever he ate already. So all that I'm bringing to you now is not halakha. Okay, so don't get the wrong idea. Right? But it's nice to know. Right? By the way, just interesting question comes up, which is why do we learn the opinions that are not halakha? What's the reason why we learn them?
Aren't they the foundation for like if you're going to make an exception?
So yeah, that's a good point what you're saying, but the truth is, there's something also something much more fundamental, which is that all these opinions, that we see were received on Har Sinai. They're part of the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu received. So therefore, since it's all part of the Torah, right, as received on Har Sinai, so therefore, when you learn all these opinions, you get rewarded for each one. They reward you because it's all the words of the living God, Divrei Elohim Chaim. This is the reason. So we get rewarded for every word, for every opinion. But the truth is, beyond that, also you get a better understanding of what's going on when you learn all the sides. You understand it better. Also, you remember it better that way. That's another thing. So there's all kinds of advantages, to learning these opinions. Okay, so anyway, right, so says this book, Katav Svara Zo, he wrote this idea, Shul Rabbeinu Hai, the Rabbeinu Hai, B'Shem Rach, the name of the Rach, V'lo Katav She'tzrich Levarech El HaMotzi. But he says, right, that only he required HaMotzi, right, not Netilat Yadayim, whatever, okay. Aval Arashba Katav Al Divrei Rabbeinu Hai, but Rashba says, like, according to Rabbeinu Hai, נראה שמדבריו דכיוון שהפסיק כבר חל עליו חיוב ברכה. So he says, you know what, it seems like you have to also do Birkat Hamazon as well, ובסוף, in the end, ובסוף, in the end, ולכך חייב לברך לשעבר אם רצה עוד לחזור לאכול. So he says if he wants to eat more, he has to bless on whatever he ate already, and then, right, again, start another meal. Again, right, we don't paskin like all this stuff. Just so you should know. So he has to do hamotzi again if he wants to eat another meal. That's what he's saying. Ravad also wrote like that. It says because since he already, right, stopped, eating, he already fulfills obligation for Birkat Hamazon, right, and retroactively. So therefore, he has to wash his hands and we make hamotzi again. Even said if he wants to eat more. So it says again, he says the same thing, that this is like a group, that left, and came back. So they need a blessing, right, retroactively. When they return, they need a blessing also, a new blessing for the next meal, whatever, if they want to continue. So by the way, if this was the halacha, it would make things a lot harder. I mean, this would be like a really pain in the neck, to do such a thing like this. People would like say to themselves, it's not even worth it. Like I don't even want to get into the volatile thing. I'll just have some cake, maybe, whatever, Make a la michya, what do I need this for? Okay. So, anyway, the עוד נתן טעם לדבר, so give another reason for this. The כיוון שהפסיק אכילתו בברכת הזימון, since he stopped eating because he made זימון, מיכל, right, וברוכה בהדד אי אפשר. So he says you can't do that, and not to eat when you're already blessed. Benjamin Advarim says that seems Latin correct. He says Ad Kana Shon Rashba. That's the end of Rashba. So the Rashba paskins like these Rishonim, like the Rav Hai Gaon and the Ravad, right? We're lucky we have the Rif and the Rambam, right, to save us from all this. Okay, all right. Umash Katav Rabbeinu V'Shem Arosh, right? So it says whatever the Rabbeinu, the two wrote the name of the Rosh, Yesh Kisaron Lashon. It says there's some words lacking there. V'kach tzarich lichtov. This is the way it has to be written, The Lidvirhem En Kan Afsakat Seudah. According to them, right? You're really not stopping the Seudah here. You're stopping. You're just making zimun. That's all, right? The Seudah goes on, right? The show must go on, as they say, right? It goes on. Ela Seudah Acheret it's a different right? It's a different seudah, legamre altogether. So in other words, what he's saying is like this, right? According to these rabbis, who are stringent, as we, the ones we just read now, what they're saying is you're not just taking a break here, to do zimun. You're actually finishing the meal altogether. So now you're starting a different meal. Oh. Okay, great. So let's move on. Bekaki piskei arosh. That's what it says in the Rosh also, he says. Oh, wow. בדת רבנו יונה, רבנו יונה, בדין זה כדת הראש, he goes like the Rosh, שחוזרים וגומרים סעודתו בלא ברכה. So he holds, right, the Rosh, also, that you just like go and finish the meal. You don't have to do another meal. He doesn't hold like that. כתב עוד, ואפילו אם נמלח, so he writes further that even if he changes his mind, אחר כך שלא לאכול כלל, he doesn't want to eat anymore now, all of a sudden, he changes his mind. כיוון שבשעת ברכת המזון הייתה כוונתו לאכול, but since at the time ברכת המזון, his intention was to eat more, ושלא יצא בברכה זו, and he didn't write fulfill his obligation with this blessing that they made, צריך לחזור וברך ברכת המזון. So then you do have to do ברכת המזון for sure, right? Because, nobody's going to absolve you from that. After all, you ate. You got to bless. Okay, great. What else we got here? Let's move on. So it says here, this rabbi says like this. As we said, right? One stops for two. Rashi explains, if two people already finished their meal, so it says, it seems like from this language, whatever, you don't have to do hamotzi again. When you're finishing your meal. The one that stopped. Right? That's what the Ram said. Right? So you see, right, that these two rabbis here are going like the first opinion that we saw yesterday, which is, you don't have to do anything again, right? Just finish your meal and, knock it off, right? That's it. So that's also like the Rosh as well, as we just saw right now. וגם בברכות חיים, also ברכות חיים, he says, כתב, שרבנו משולם כתב, על דברי הרעב"ד, he says this rabbi wrote the name of the Ravad, the כבוד הרב במקומו, so he says, with all due respect, to this rabbi, מונח, לעניין ההלכה, כיוון דרבנו יונה בראש ועד. So right, bottom line, right, says Bit Yosef now, right? What's the bottom line? Conclusion, right? He says, since Rabbeinu Yonah and the Rosh and the Bahag, right? And Shibboleh Leket, the Rabbeinu Meshulam, Maskim Yadat Echad, since they all agree, right, that this is the halacha. Achin Aktin, that's the way you paskin. They all have a Safek Brachot. This is also another thing, right? Which is it's a blessing, in vain, undoubtedly, right? It's a doubtfully could be. The Rabbanan, the Ulakil. So therefore we go lenient, right? So bottom line, right, is that we pass like the lenient opinion. So that means that once you do the zimun, right, when your friends are leaving, you're gonna just go back and finish your meal without making any extra blessings there. But just at the end, right, you have to do Birkat Hamazon. After all, you did eat, right? So you can't escape from that. Okay, great. So let's move on. Katav Achia Rab Yechiel. So he says, right, my brother Rabbi Yechiel wrote, right, this was the brother of the two, right? Shalti Ladoni Avarsal. So he says, you know what? I asked my father, right, the Rosh. Leperush Ri, according to Ri, says Shepiresh Yachid Hamafsik Leshnaim, that he says that when one stops for two, Shematchil Benodelecha, and he starts from the second blessing, etc. Komar Leperush Ri. So Beit Yosef explains, right, that according to the Perush of the Ri, Shul Keperush Rashi, he goes like Rashi, Al Leechan Hu Chozer, regarding where he returns, right, after he does Birkat Hamazon. Where does he go back to? Chozer Daino Echad Hamafsik L'Shnaim. It's talking about one who stopped for two people. Shehu Tzarich Le'apsik Ad, and he has to stop in order to do Zimun. Ad Shegamar Marech Birkat Hazan, until they do Birkat Hazan. V'chazar Zeh Sheifsik L'Shnaim. So then, right, this one who stopped, right, went back. The one who stopped for two people. The Gamar said that when he finished his meal, where does he go back? To bless. After he finishes the meal. So they hold, right, that we go back to the place where you stopped. So meaning what? The second blessing. The second one, yeah. Blessing of the land. Right, so there was a question with this rabbi. Oh, so what about if three people stop for seven people? They had 10 people there. So then how did they do zimun there? On what they ate, after they did zimun with seven people, since they're going back to the place where they stopped. Then Birkat Taretz in the second blessing. The Rosh answers, it says, no, Rosh says they got to go back to the beginning. Kedin Zimun, like the law of Zimun. What's the reason why? Mishum Deshlosha says because three people, Kevan Shem Chayavim B'Zimun, since they are obligated to do Zimun. Nimtza She'enam Mitzarfin Ima Shiva. They don't really combine with the seven. Oh, wow. Just because they have to mention the name of God. בלבד, מה שאין כן ביחיד דכיוון דלאו בר זימון הוא, so it says not so when it comes to individual, right, that what, since he's not really eligible for zimun, an individual, in other words, individual is not eligible for zimun, so he has to combine with the two people, in every way. The mikra zimun, which is called zimun, the ainu ad sof birkat hazan, until the end of hazan kol. According to Rav Sheshet. Even according to what Tosfot said, Rosh, the Tama that Rav Sheshet lav mishum. So he says the reason Rav Sheshet is not because the Chashi Birkat Hazan Zimun, that Hazan is called Zimun, Ela mishum nibarech ena bracha mistaber, that mirabarech is not a blessing. Mistaber she'apsik achilato b'shvil beracha achad. So it makes sense to say, he says that he should stop his eating for one blessing. In order that it should be recognizable that we're blessing together with him the zimun. So it says we can say that it's different here. Kivan shehu mazkir Eloheinu, because he mentioned the name of God. Chashuv shapir bracha, so therefore it's considered to be like a blessing. V'yilkach eno tzarich lefsik yoter, so he doesn't stop any more than that. Interesting. Wow. Okay, let's move on. ומה שכתב רבנו, ואני כבר כתבתי שחוזר לראש ברכת הזן, so he says, and that which Rabbeinu said, meaning the Tur, right? It says, I already wrote that he goes to the beginning of right Birkat Hazan. In other words, it starts at the beginning of Birkat Hamazon. כל מקום למדנו בדבריו לעניין שלושה שמפסיקים, but he says we learn from his words that when it comes to three people that stop, כלומר, אף על פי שכתבתי למעלה, even though he says I wrote above, but it says בית יוסף, דאחיד המפסיק לשניים, that two people that stop for two, I'm sorry, one person who stopped for two people, וחזר ואכל, then he returned to eat, שהוא צריך לחזור לראש ברכת המזון. So what he has to do is go back to ברכת המזון, the beginning. ואם כן, אין נפקותא בדברי רבנו יחיאל, so he says, therefore, there's no difference really between Rabbi Yechiel, the pshita, the שלושה שהפסיקו לעשרה, either way, right? Also, the same thing there. When three people stop for 10, נמי חוזרים לראש, go back also because the beginning of ברכת המזון. וכל שכן הוא, so it says all the more so. Why? בכל מקום, בתשובת הראש, but it says nevertheless, according to תשובת הראש, אליו, the way he answered him, the ראש, יש נפקותא אף לדינן. So there's also practical difference for us as well. והיינו נפקותא דשלושה המפסיקים לשבעה. So where is that? Where you have three people that are stopping for 7. So there they only have to stop until nevarech. They don't have to wait until they finish zan. Just like an individual has to stop when he's stopping for two people. Okay, so it's a whole big mishmash here, of different opinions. But we're going to see in the Shulchan Aruch what's the bottom line. Now we're going to go back to sanity a little bit, as they say, right? Yeah. Okay. So I think we did the first Shulchan Aruch yesterday. So I'll read the second one. It says, "En tzarich le'afsik ela ad shomar." So now, right, the question is like this: until where does he have to stop? Stop eating, and do zimun together with them. So it says, you have to stop until he says, "Baruch she'achanu mishalo." Right there, that's it. Right. So meaning what? He doesn't have to do the first blessing. Wait till the first blessing is done by them. He doesn't have to wait for that. So then he's going to finish his meal, right? He's not going to make hamotzi again or wash his hands or whatever, right? None of that stuff. Okay, so then says the Rama here, some say right? He brings the other opinion, right? Which is the Rosh, right? That the Rosh says you got to wait till he says the first blessing. So says the Rama, that's our custom, right? So right, you see the Ashkenazim are stringent about this. So what they do is they wait until they say Hazanat Hakol. Then he goes back to eat, right? Finishes his meal. And then what? And then he does Birkat Hamazon, right? The whole thing, top to bottom. He's starting from beginning, starting from scratch. Even though the first blessing was already recited by those two guys, but nevertheless, right? He didn't really fulfill his obligation with that. Well, all he did was, just combine with the Zimu. That's all he did. He didn't get involved with Birkat Hamazon. That's what he's saying. Okay, so let's see if we got everything over here, right? I hope we didn't miss any points here. I'll just check a little bit, make sure. Yeah, I think we pretty much covered it. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll go to the next chapter. Okay. We're almost done with this topic. It's pretty long, but very useful. Okay. Next chapter. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, so this is the last one. This is the last one. Okay. So what does the Torah say here? Gadol mevarech afilu ba besof. Right. So what is it saying? We already spoke about this a little bit before regarding Birkat Hamazon, and the same thing here applies to Zimun as well. So what are we saying? That who are we gonna pick to do the Zimun, to lead the Zimun? So just like we said over there regarding Birkat Hamazon, we want the big guy, right? So here also the big guy we want. Who's the big guy? Right? The one who's the most learned in Torah. That's the big guy. So says regarding that, Bet Yosef, Maskanat the Gemara beperek shlosha she'achlu. This is the conclusion of the Gemara, also there, right in the Brachot, Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Okay, great. So then it says the tour afterwards. Ve'im ratzad liten leshut lekatan leshai. So what about if he wants to waive his honor, right, and give it to somebody, some junior fellow there, not as big as him. Is he allowed to do that? So he says, yes, you're allowed to, if he wants to waive his, give it to somebody else. Why not? That's his privilege. So regarding that, says Bet Yosef, that's what it says in Tosfot. Midrash Kechan Sham, like we find over there, Mem Vav Vet, the Rav, the Rav Asher, Havu Yatve Beseudata. So what happens? This is a story in the Gemara that these two rabbis were right sitting in a Seudah, Rav and Rav Chia, right? Okay. Comment the Rabbi Amar, the Rabbi. They were sitting in front of Rabbi. Right? Amale Rabbi le Rav. So Rabbi tells to Rav, Kum mashe yadech chazie. So he tells him, you know what? Go wash your hands. Tells him. What do you mean by that? What is he telling him? Your hands are dirty? No, that's not what he meant. Right. So what he meant was that, I want you to do the zimun. Right? Even though Rav was his Talmid. Hazie deka miltat. Oh, so what happened, right? When he told him this, he started to get scared. He got frightened over here. What happened? Amale Pachte ein Birkat Amazona kamarach. So he had a misunderstanding, you know what's going on here. But right, his rabbi told him, he says, "Don't worry, I'm not gonna have you executed, don't worry, I just want you to do the Birkat Hamazon, got nothing to worry about." Yeah, I mean, that's what he meant to tell him. Okay, there you go. And then he says, but Yosef continues a little bit more. ואין מילה כשאין שם אורח, אבל אם יש שם אורח, הוא מברך כדי שיברך לבעל הבית. Oh, so then comes the Torah and says, right? When do we say that the gadol, right, makes the blessing? That's when there's no guest there. But if there's a guest, so then we want the guest to do it. Why is that? So we should bless the host. That's the whole thing, because there is a blessing there in Birkat Hamazon to bless the host. So it says regarding that, the Beit Yosef, Beresh Perek Shlosha Sheachlu, it's also there in Gin Brachot. Katav Rosh, says the Rosh there, Vafilu Bala Bait Gadol Mina Oriach. So he says, even though the host is bigger than the guest, Kedash Kachan Rabbi, like we find with Rabbi over here, right? Damar Le Rab Mavarech, he told to Rab to do the Birkat Hamazon. Milmiu, he says, nevertheless, in Bala Bait Rotzeh Levater, nevertheless, right, if the host wants to, right, be gracious, and give it to the guests, so, right, that's what you do. כתוב בספר אוהל מועד, says in אוהל מועד, דעורך מברך חנה מילה כשהוא הגון בעיני הבעל הבית. So it's that when we say, right, that the guest should do the blessing, that's if, right, the host, respects this guy. In other words, he's not a shady character, one of these guys, right? ואם אינו הגון בעל הבית, right, מעביר ממנו הברכה. But he says if he's not a, respectable character, so then, right, the host doesn't give it to him. Too bad. Okay, then it goes on. ומש ברכה מברכו, יהי רצון מלפני אבינו שבשמיים שלא יבוש, right? So what, then the Torah says, right? What does he bless him? In other words, the guest, how does he bless the host? So he brings you there the language, right? That we have in the Birkat Hamazon for blessing the host. So, look in your Siddur and you'll find that, right? You'll see how we do it. From what I see here in the language of the Torah, it seems like his version was much shorter than ours because our version is like the deluxe version. It's like pretty elaborate there, all kinds of stuff. That's everything is like that, by the way. In our generations, the later generations, everything is more. It's larger. It's like just more cumbersome. That's the way it is. In those days, they had like just the short version of everything. What can you do, right? That's our destiny. What can we do? That's our lot. So yeah, so it says Bet Yosef, Pashut Beresh Perek Shlosha Sheachlu. That's written over there in the Perek Gemara there. In Brachot, same thing. מה שכתב בעל הבית רוצה לוותר על ברכתו, right, so what about if the right host wants to, right, again, right, to relinquish his blessing? Yeah, so we have to see the Torah inside. What he means by this, a little bit strange. Mhm. Okay, so this is what he says in Turim. He says, "Im balabait rotze levater al birkato." If the host, right, wants to, like cancel this arrangement here. In other words, he doesn't want the host, the guest, to bless him, whatever. So he has the right to do that. So what does that mean? He can do Birkat Hamazon by himself. If that's his, will, that's his right prerogative. So he can do what he wants. He doesn't want to be blessed by the host. Go figure, right? Okay, that's what he says. So he has the right to do that. So meaning what? That it's not really an obligation for him to give it to the host. It's just it's a nice gesture to receive the guest from the blessing from the guest. That's what it's all about. Okay, great. So we'll go to Bet Yosef Shulchan Aruch and we'll finish it off. That's it. So it says that Bet Yosef one thing, right? That this halacha that the Tur brought over here comes from the Rosh. He just brings you the source over here. Okay, great. So let's go to Shulchan Aruch and we're done. Wrap it up. Let's see what we got. So it says Shulchan Aruch, Gadol mevarech afilu ba b'lesof, right? So he says, again, right, the big guy will do Birkat HaMazon, right? This is the rule, right? Big guy. Even if he came in the end, in other words, he was like a latecomer, still doesn't change anything. If he wants to give permission to the little guy, right, to do it, okay, he can do that. That's only when you have no guests. But if you do have a guest, right, he does the blessing. Even though the host is bigger than him. Why is that? So we should bless the um, the host. Why do we want this guy so much to bless the host? What's the idea of that? Anybody have an idea? Okay, so I'll tell you guys what's the purpose of this. The purpose is that since this guy came over to his house and he fed him good, he gave him a nice meal, right? So now he has like appreciation towards him, you know. So it's a good thing to be blessed by somebody, when he has appreciation towards you, from a good heart. That's the reason why we want him to bless you, because that blessing, will be strong. It'll take effect because of the fact that you took care of him. That's the reason. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. So he says, uh, what's the blessing that he blesses him, right? The guest to the host. יהי רצון שלא יבוש בעולם יכלם כל הבית הזה, לא בעולם הזה ולא בעולם הבא. So, right, I'll give you just the simple meaning, right? That may be the will, right? That what? That this host should not be ashamed or abashed in this world or in the world to come. He should be, right? He should be successful in his endeavors, in all his endeavors. Right? And also, right, that his endeavors should be close to the town, You shouldn't have to travel too much. And also, the Satan should not, right, foil his endeavors. Also, right, he shouldn't come to any, right, sinful thoughts, sin or sinful thoughts. For now and forever, right? Wow. Okay, those are good words. As I said, right, ours is a little bit longer than that, but it's okay. As we said, right? We have extra baggage these days. Not surprising. This extra baggage has accrued over the years, you know? It's like, I can't tell you. So let's move on. Almost done. So then he says, right, in balabait as we said, right, if the host wants to, relieve him of this, arikato, he wants to do birkat hamazon by himself. Rasha is allowed to do that, as we said. So says the Rama here, "Vehu din shachol liten lebarech lemi sheyirtzeh." So it says, right, that the same thing also applies. He can give it to anybody he wants. In other words, it's his gig, So therefore, he can, right, be gracious to anybody and give it to him, as he pleases. That's the way things are. So you see, right, that the host is in charge. That's the way it is, by the way, in Judaism. We already spoke about this before, right? That when you go as a guest somewhere, what I mean, like the host is in charge. He's in the driver's seat, so you gotta have to like, humble yourself, and let him, let him run the show. Don't try to overpower him. That's not proper manners. Some people try to do that, and you know what happens, right? They wind up getting kicked out of the house, you know, because of their arrogance, whatever, right? Okay. So, okay, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and happiness. Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch. We'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy your Tu B'Shvat. Don't forget your fruits, right? Your fruit package, whatever, right? Enjoy it. So we'll see you tomorrow. Bezat Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All the best.
Kavod Thank you so much.
God bless.